Family Guy is famous for making fun of everyone. They've gone after Republicans, Democrats, Christians, Muslims, Jews, gay people, and even some of the most famous celebrities to have ever lived. They've commented on wars, terrorism, political drama, made fun of entire nationalities and ethnicities, and on multiple occasions, they've done extremely high-effort parodies of other shows and movies like Star Wars. And the common them in all of it is this: if the Family Guy writers find something funny or odd about you, even if it's just one little thing, they'll zero in on it and turn it into a running gag. And usually, stuff like this is received pretty well, with celebrities joking about their Family Guy cartoon persona in interviews, or even teaming up with Family Guy to voice certain characters through cameo appearances. We've also seen other shows make fun of Family Guy, like when South Park did their famous episode where they mock the story structure and cheap cutaway gags of Family Guy by comparing their creators to manatees in an aquarium. However, things don't always work out in favor of the Family Guy writers, and some folks like Carol Burnett and Art Matrano had their egos so bruised that they went on the offensive, dragging Family Guy into the court and suing them for defamation. And then there was the incident with Terry Schiavo's family, who urged Fox to cancel Family Guy altogether because they felt that Family Guy was using Terry's condition to mock people with brain injuries. Yet, despite all the controversy, all the allegations of defamation, and all the threats of cancellation, Family Guy has kept on going for the past 25 years, and they're still making fun of celebs to this day. So in the spirit of comedy, here are some of the best celebrity roasts ever made on Family Guy. Starting with a rather innocent prank played by Willem Dafoe on Stewie. We all know that Willem is a super nice guy, and really down to earth in real life, but you must admit, he does play a lot of creepy characters in movies.
Hey, you asleep yet?
No.
Just checking.
And I'm not just talking about the Green Goblin. Anyway, his Family Guy parody version appears in this episode where Stewie tries to kill Lua and ties up the entire Griffin family before taking Brian hostage and driving straight the CIA headquarters, from where he is planning to take over the entire world. This is when Stewie admits that way back in the day, he had Willem Dafoe living under his bed, occasionally sliding out with a cigarette in his hand before asking Stewie if he was asleep. Then, he'd slither back underneath the bed like the world's creepiest stalker. But as funny as the Dafoe parody was, I still think the one they did on Stephen Hawking was even funnier. Here, we see a version of Stephen Hawking who isn't actually paralyzed, but is only pretending to be disabled for the cameras. And as soon as the interview is over, he jumps out of his chair and complains to the producer that he's tired of keeping up this shtick, and that his seat is starting to smell.
I'm telling you, man, this shtick is getting so old. That chair smells, dude. Hey, Steve, surf's up! Bitchin'! See ya, chick.
Then, one of his friends shouts from off-screen that there's a huge wave approaching, and Steven runs away with his surfboard, leaving everyone's favorite reporter, Trisha Takinawa, bewildered. Although it can be hard to tell what she's really feeling since, you know, she has exactly one expression all the time. Gal Gadot was also placed into the firing line over at Family Do because of that super cringy COVID-19 video that she recorded with a bunch of other celebrities where they all sing John Lennon's Imagine and try to cheer people up. But Family Guy clearly wasn't impressed with this ham-fisted and low-effort performance, which is why in their COVID vaccine PSA scene, while Brian and Stewie are trying to convince people to get the shot, Stewie pulls out his phone and shows a video of Gal singing Imagine and says that COVID must be defeated because they can't bear another second of her singing. And Gal's far from the only big-name Hollywood celeb to be targeted by Family Guy. In fact, the Governator himself, Arnold Schwarzenegger, who has been an action movie and bodybuilding icon since the 1970s, also found himself in Family Guy's crosshairs. Personally, I think they nailed his accent in the Terminator looks. Here, see for yourself.
Every second I'm not having sex with a housekeeper, robots are killing people in the future.
Okay, I finished for the day.
You lied to me. You do have a housekeeper. Let's go make a large-faced
I think
boy.
this whole gag of Arnold dressing up as the Terminator to fool people into thinking that there's a robot apocalypse going on in the future, and that the only way to stop them from killing everyone is by letting him have sex with a housekeeper. It's just peak comedy. I also love how irritated he gets when he discovers that there was a housekeeper this entire time and that the woman was keeping her hidden. But at least he did better than his buddy Sylvester Stallone. The next celeb on my list is Jon Stewart, someone who's famous for his sharp wit and is known to make fun of others on his late night show. But it turns out that Jon has a bit of a glass chin because he can't handle some light return fire. There is no recurring gag with him in it, nor does Family Guy make a habit of turning him into a caricature like they've done with so many other celebs. Instead, he was only mentioned once in this episode where Peter makes a Hitler scarecrow to drive Mort away from his home. And as he's running away in terror, Mort says, "Protect Jon Stewart. He's our most important Jew." Nothing too offensive, just a quick mention. But as a result of this, Seth received an angry phone call from Jon himself, in which Jon went on a fuming tirade for an hour straight, and it was so bad that McFarlane's publicist has forbidden him from even talking about it. Dan Rather, the famous news anchor, also received a treatment similar to that Jon Stewart on Family Guy. Only in his case, it was a more high-effort gag, rather than a simple name drop. Now, if you've ever listened to Dan speaking, he has this tendency to linger on his S's, not in a Sean Connery way either. It sounds more high-pitched, almost like he's whistling. And the Family Guy writers must have caught on to this because they made a whole cutaway gag mocking Dan's lisp, in which Dan reads through a news report full off alliterations that all start with the letter S.
Settlement, squatters. I'm Dan Rather.
And you can tell he's struggling because soon afterwards, we find out that his head is actually a human teapot as steam starts pouring out of his ears, and a staff member has to carry him away off screen so he can cool down. However, unlike Jon Stewart, who was absolutely furious at his portrayal in Family Guy, Dan took it like a champ when he was shown the cartoon version of himself during a Reddit AMA and laughed it off, admitting that it was quite funny. Now that's how you take a joke, fellas. No malice, no grudges, just smiles. Family Guy has also mocked Cary Elwes for his role in the 1993 movie Robin Hood, Men in Tights. And the whole point of the gag was that Elwes, despite being a celebrity, wasn't actually all that famous. And Peter conveys this through a fan mail in which he says,
"You were a big deal in one thing, but you were wearing a mask for most of it."
a clear reference to his role as Robin Hood in Men in Tights, a role that Elwes himself forgot about, which is kind of like Steve Downes forgetting that he played Master Chief in Halo. And yes, that actually happened, but it was only the first Halo game. Downes quickly realized the importance of his role once the series went mainstream, and I can guarantee he will never forget that he's Master Chief ever again. The next celeb to find themselves on the Family Guy chopping block is none other than talk show host Jimmy Fallon.
Tonight, get ready to lose all respect for Al Pacino when I force him to play a game meant for children!
Who must really get on the nerves of someone in the Family Guy creative team, because they don't just take shots at him. Instead, they turn him into a running gag and show him creeping on an underage Meg only so he can use her as a prop for his SNL episode, which then results in him getting beat up by Peter for all the wrong reasons. Then, several years down the line, they go after Fallon once again by saying that he can go viral for doing any lame thing, which is clearly a dig at his overly corporate, highly scripted persona that's deliberately designed to appeal to the broadest possible audience while being completely devoid of any honest opinions or edginess whatsoever. And if you think we're turning up the heat, just wait till you see what Family Guy did to poor Tom Cruise. First, it started out relatively tame, with Tom being portrayed as a handsome, dashing Hollywood star, but with a few skeletons in his closet. Then, it turned into a gag about Tom being in the closet, as he's literally running from his own gay thoughts in this scene.
Wow, that cameraman has nice strong arms.
You can't catch me, gay thoughts!
Now, I don't want to say Tom is a bad target, but he did try to sue South Park when they mocked him for being a Scientologist. And yet, Family Guy kept the gag going until eventually, Tom was reduced to a 1-foot-tall garden gnome, no bigger than Stewie, and Tiny Tom is this hyperactive, almost evil caricature of himself who rides tricycles, is constantly high on caffeine, and plays shitty pranks on random people like a spoiled man-child. They even mocked his couch jumping episode on Oprah and take shots as his religion, which, if you know Tom's history with that sort of stuff, is liable to get you a cease and desist letter from the Church of Scientology itself. Moving on, though, we've got Michael Jackson, and Family Guy doesn't hold back at all with him. They've featured the pop icon in several episodes, where they make fun of the fact that he likes little kids. perhaps a little too much. Like that one episode where a bunch of children are watching the Thriller movie in 3D, and Michael suddenly jumps out of the screen and runs away with one of them. There was another episode where Stewie is testifying against Michael in court, and when the attorney asks if Mr. Jackson behaved inappropriately towards him, he says, yes, but the worst part was that he never called back. Then there's this gag, which makes fun of Michael's crotch-grabbing move that he likes to do while dancing. George Clooney has also been featured in Family Guy, although his portrayal is relatively innocent compared to some of the more bombastic caricatures we've seen so far.
Hi, George Clooney, second worst Batman.
Peter Griffin, second best Homer.
And in this episode, they mock him for being the second worst Batman of all time, and for being able to get away with all sorts of weird antics that would land any normal Hollywood star in controversy. But because Clooney is so handsome and well-spoken, everyone turns a blind eye. And speaking of eyes, how about a black eye, like the one Chris Brown gave to Joni in this episode of Family Guy, where they're both at a party and the host offers them some punch to drink. But Joni says she's already had some while driving to the party in her car, and you can see Chris Brown staring at her angrily as she's got a black eye and a broken tooth.
Can I offer you some punch?
No thanks. I had some in the car.
A clear reference to Chris's many domestic violence incidents. There is also a scene at Chris Brown's recording studio where Peter walks in dressed as a woman and tells Brown that he's a huge fan, only for Brown to then punch him straight into the elevator. But the worst is yet to come, and this might be the one that pushes a bit too far. So you've all watched The Dark Knight, right? One of the best superhero movies ever made, and regarded by many as the best live-action Batman film ever, thanks to the performance of the late Heath Ledger, who passed away from a drug overdose shortly before the film's release. Well, Family Guy does a parody of his hospital scene, where he dresses up as the world's creepiest nurse and blows up an entire building. But the punchline that comes at the end just hits different. Peter says he's going to overdose in his apartment. I'll admit, it's kind of funny, but only in a very weird, morbid way, and there are definitely many who'll find this joke tasteless. But hey, if your humor doesn't offend at least a few people, then it's probably not all that good. Anyway guys, that's all the Family Guy celebrity roasts I have for today. If you're a Family Guy fan, I bet you've seen at least some of these before, but which ones took you by surprise? And which ones did you think came the closest to crossing the line? Let me know down in the comments. And for the next time, I'm thinking of doing one about all the celebrity guests who voiced characters in Family Guy, because there are some really interesting ones in here that I bet you didn't recognize the first time you heard it. And if you want to see more Family Guy rankings like this, don't forget to subscribe and drop a like. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Until then, adios.